The champagne didn't fall quickly. It fell in slow motion, almost graceful, like the room itself wanted to witness every cruel drop. 300 guests were frozen in place. As the golden liquid soaked her gown, cascading down silk that shimmered seconds earlier, now it clung to her like a wound. Her face didn't twist in anger. She didn't shout. She didn't step back. She just stared forward with an expression of pure disbelief. The kind that asks, "How did we get here? How did you become this?" Behind her, two blonde women burst into laughter. Not nervous laughter. Not accidental laughter. But sharp, delighted, vicious laughter. The kind people use when they think they've found someone beneath them. Forks stopped midair. Conversations died in throats. The ballroom didn't breathe. Because everyone could feel it. The humiliation was intentional, cruel, calculated. And yet, none of them had the faintest idea who they had just drenched in champagne. The narrator enters, slow, steady, unblinking. They thought she didn't belong here. But they had no idea who she truly was. Before we dive deeper into this story, tell me something. Have you ever been treated like you didn't belong? Only for people to later discover they were wrong about you? Drop your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear it. Fade briefly. And the night begins to rewind. Before the champagne. Before the whispers. Before the cruelty cracked open the truth. Aaliyah Hart walked into that ballroom quietly. The way storms roll in before anyone notices the sky has changed. 35 years old. Black, brilliant, breathtaking. A woman whose presence didn't shout. Glowed. Her beauty wasn't loud. It was the kind that pulled eyes without asking for them. Smooth skin catching the chandelier lights. Hair cascading in perfect waves across her shoulders. A champagne gold gown flowing around her body like it had been poured on. Born for her and her alone. But beneath the elegance, lived something even more powerful. Discipline. Survival. Strategy. Silence built from years of being underestimated. Aaliyah wasn't just beautiful. She was dangerous in the way only a self-made woman can be. Sharp, calm, unreadable. CEO of Hart Global Capital. One of the youngest private fund leaders in the country. A mind capable of taking a company apart and rebuilding it stronger, without breaking a sweat. But she arrived without a trail of cameras, without security, without the loud footsteps of wealth. She didn't enter like someone who needed attention. She entered like someone who owned her space, even when others refused to give it. As she stepped deeper into the gala, conversations flickered around her. People glanced and dismissed her. The wealthy have a talent for judging the surface and missing the substance. She preferred it that way. Because she wasn't there to impress anyone. She wasn't there to be seen. She was there to watch. To observe the culture of the company. She was moments away from investing $1.2 billion into a silent, invisible power in a room that believed it could identify value on sight. They were wrong. So wrong. And the night was about to prove it. The ballroom of the Hartswell Grand looked like a dream designed by someone who had never lived in the real world. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks, casting warm gold across marble floors polished enough to reflect every inch of ego that walked over them. A string quartet played something soft and expensive, the kind of music people pretend to appreciate, while secretly measuring each other's worth by watches, haircuts, and last names. Every table was dressed like royalty. Silver cutlery, tall candles, centerpieces overflowing with white roses. Guests floated through the room, with champagne glasses raised like trophies, and conversations that sounded practiced, performed. Hello. Laughter bubbled everywhere, but it was the brittle kind, the kind that cracks under honesty, because under the glitter and gold, the room had a scent. Arrogance mixed with desperation. They weren't here for beauty, not for charity, not for celebration. They were here for the deal of the decade, a historic $1.2 billion partnership, with a mysterious investor whose identity remained hidden. Everyone had a theory. A German tech giant, a Middle Eastern prince, a retired billionaire with 10 passports, an eccentric European collector. The guesses got wilder with every glass poured. One thing they all agreed on: had to be a man, had to be powerful, it had to be someone important enough to explain why the company's board was practically vibrating with anticipation. No one, not one guest in that entire room, even considered that the investor might be a black woman, standing quietly among them, unnoticed, unbothered, watching every interaction like a patient queen. Aaliyah observed the room with steady calm, her expression unreadable, every smirk, every forced smile, every entitled tone. She catalogued it all. Because this deal wasn't about money for her. Money she already had. This was about culture, leadership, character. She wanted to see how these people treated someone they didn't think they needed. And from the moment she entered, she already had her answer. But the night was far from finished. And the lesson they would learn was far from gentle. It always starts small. The way prejudice tests the air before it decides to strike. Aaliyah moved toward the bar. Not hurried, not hesitant, just moving with a calm grace that made people notice, without knowing why. But at this gala, grace was an offense. Confidence was a threat. Two women stood near the counter. Olivia and Brianna. The kind of women who never had to wonder if they belonged anywhere, because the world always told them they did. They noticed her instantly. Not with admiration, with calculation. Their eyes dragged over her gown, her skin, her posture. Then to each other. Silent agreement. She shouldn't be here. Aaliyah reached the bar and waited politely. But Olivia stepped in front of her, blocking her view of the bartender, without even pretending it was accidental. "Some of us have reservations," she said, flashing a smile that cut instead of welcomed. Brianna chimed in, just loud enough for Aaliyah and everyone nearby to hear. "Do they even check invites anymore?" A man in a tux glanced over his shoulder, then turned away quickly, ashamed to listen, too cowardly to intervene. Aaliyah kept her expression steady. No reaction, no confrontation, just silence. And silence is dangerous. It reveals more than anger ever could. Security approached next. A tall man with an earpiece, eyes fixed on her like she was out of place, like she needed permission to breathe there. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "are you sure you're on the right list tonight?" It was almost funny, the idea that a woman funding the entire event needed to prove she belonged. Aaliyah smiled softly, not mocking, not bitter, just tired. "Everything is exactly where it should be," she answered. He didn't understand. Of course he didn't. He stepped aside, confused. But Olivia and Brianna watched her walk away. And the resentment in their eyes tightened into something heavier, something meaner. Jealousy has a scent. And tonight smelled like trouble. Everything was building, layer by layer, word by word, glance by glance. The champagne, the humiliation, the fall of the entire gala. It was all coming. And they had no idea how close they were to destroying themselves. It happened faster than the room could process, and slower than Aaliyah would ever forget. She was standing near the crystal pillars, letting the music settle into the background, when Olivia and Brianna approached, with that same sugary smile that always tastes like venom underneath. "Oops, sorry," Brianna said as she accidentally bumped into Aaliyah's shoulder, sending a splash of her drink across the silk of the gown. It wasn't enough. Not for them. Olivia's hand already reached for another glass of champagne from a nearby server's tray, her fingers curling around the stem, with the confidence of someone who believed the room belonged to her. She lifted it slowly, smiling wide, eyes locked on Aaliyah's. She wasn't offering a toast. She was offering humiliation. And then, with a tiny tilt of her wrist, and a wicked little laugh, the champagne fell. It hit her gown in a golden wave, spreading down the fabric like a stain of cruelty, creeping across the shimmer of the dress, until it clung to her skin, cold and unapologetic. A real sharp collective gasp cut through the entire ballroom. Every conversation died at once. Every camera turned. Every heart suddenly knew. This wasn't an accident. This was an attack. Brianna put a hand over her mouth, pretending shock, but laughing underneath it. Olivia leaned in close, whispering through a smirk that sliced deeper than the champagne ever could. Women like you don't come here to drink. You come to serve. Aaliyah didn't move, didn't wipe the champagne away, didn't look down. She just stared ahead, eyes wide, lips parted, a quiet tremble in her breath, like she was witnessing a version of humanity she wished didn't exist. Her disbelief was louder than any scream. Her silence was heavier than any insult, because this wasn't just humiliation. This was a reminder, the kind every successful black woman knows too well. No matter how high you rise, some people will still try to drag you back to the ground. But Aaliyah didn't fall. She simply turned, never breaking eye contact, and walked out of the ballroom with a dignity so sharp it made the entire room swallow their pride. Her steps were slow, measured, silent, and behind her, the two blonde women laughed, not knowing that the woman they had just humiliated was about to decide the fate of every single person in that room. The hallway outside the ballroom was colder, quieter, almost too still, as if the chaos inside hadn't reached it yet. Aaliyah walked until the music faded behind her, until the sound of laughter, the same cruel laughter that stained her gown, became nothing more than a memory. She stopped beneath a wall sconce, throwing soft golden light across the champagne-soaked fabric. She looked down at herself for the first time, just once, and inhaled slowly, not in pain, not in anger, but in calculation. Aaliyah Hart had spent her entire life learning the difference between reacting and responding, and tonight, a reaction would have been too small. She reached into her clutch and pulled out her phone. Her fingers didn't tremble. Her voice didn't shake. She dialed one number, the only number she needed. Rang once. "Ma'am." Her financial director answered immediately, as if he'd been expecting the call. Aaliyah didn't waste a breath. "Execute the protocol," she said quietly. "Now." There was no confusion on the other end. He knew exactly what that meant. Freeze on negotiations, a halt on transfers, a lock on the entire $1.2 billion deal. The board inside that ballroom had been celebrating, like children playing dress-up. "Yes, ma'am. It's already in motion." He paused. "Are you all right?" Aaliyah looked at the gown again, the stain glistening like a bruise under the lights, and exhaled through her nose. "I am," she said. "Unlike them. I know exactly who I am." She hung up. No anger, no fear, only certainty. Behind her, the muffled music stopped abruptly, as if the room itself sensed the shift, as if the building had an instinct that something powerful had just been set in motion. Aaliyah straightened her shoulders, adjusted the strap of her gown, and took one slow step toward the exit. She didn't look back. She didn't need to, because the storm she just unleashed was already racing toward the ballroom, and no one inside was prepared for the damage. Back inside the ballroom, everything felt exactly the same. For about 10 more seconds, the chandeliers still glowed, the quartet still played, the guests still floated in their bubbles of arrogance and champagne. But then, the music cracked, a violin note choked midstring, the speakers blinked, screens around the stage flickered, as if the entire system took a single terrified breath. People turned their heads, confused, annoyed. The host, a man who had been bragging about the deal all night, checked his phone, ready to ignore whatever alert came through. But the moment he saw the message, his face drained of color. He froze, eyes wide, mouth half open. Something inside him broke quietly. One of the board members rushed to him, whispering, "Is it confirmed?" The host nodded, as if his neck weighed 100 pounds. "The deal," he swallowed, voice cracking. "The deal is suspended." Suspended. The word sliced through the room like cold steel. What do you mean suspended? Who authorized that? Is this a joke? Check again. Panic spread like fire on dry leaves. Investors pulled out their phones. Executives grabbed their laptops. Notifications poured in like a storm. Transfer halted. Accounts frozen. Partnership locked. Priority access revoked. Brianna, still glowing with smugness from humiliating Aaliyah, laughed nervously. Calm down. Deals don't just vanish. But Olivia noticed it first. The pattern, the timing, the dread curling in her stomach. She whispered. Someone pulled out. Someone big. Near the stage. A young associate gasped loudly, dropping his tablet. The anonymous investor cancelled, he said, voice shaking. They cancelled everything. Silence. Silence so thick. It swallowed every heartbeat in the room. Whispers rose like ghosts. No, no, that can't be. Why would they pull out tonight? That investor built this deal. Without them, we're finished. What happened? What did we do? A woman in the back said it first. Not loud, but loud enough. Who humiliated that woman earlier? Heads turned, eyes widened, spines stiffened. 'Cause suddenly, the dots were connecting themselves. And for the first time that night, fear replaced vanity. The ballroom buzzed with confusion. Fear moving from table to table. Like a cold draft no one could escape. Executives argued in low, panicked whispers. Investors stared at crashing numbers on their screens. Board members searched for someone to blame. Someone to sacrifice. But the truth came faster than any of them expected. A junior analyst, barely 30, shaking, holding a tablet like it was burning his hands, pushed through the crowd and reached the board's table. I think you should see this, he stuttered. The room leaned in collectively. As he turned the screen around, a single document glowed bright in the dim light. Primary capital holder, Aaliyah Hart. Full ownership. $1.2 billion. Silence cracked open, like the world had stopped spinning. Brianna covered her mouth. Olivia staggered back a step, as if the floor had just tilted beneath her feet. That's impossible, a board member said, his voice a dry whisper. Another executive shook his head, sweat beading at his temple. No, this was vetted. This was background checked. This was confirmed before the gala. The host grabbed the tablet, scrolling frantically. Her signature, her company seal, her financial authority, all of it right there. And all of them had missed it. A woman near the stage whispered, "Oh my God! She was here tonight." The realization spread in waves of horror. The woman they mocked. The woman security questioned. The woman Olivia and Brianna humiliated. In front of everyone, was the one who held the power to destroy them. With a single phone call, someone finally said it aloud. Stunned, breathless, broken, we poured champagne on the billionaire investor. The ballroom didn't make a sound, because now they understood. The deal wasn't suspended by chance. It was dismantled by the very woman they had treated like she didn't belong. The next morning, the city was quieter than usual. Or maybe it only felt that way. Because Olivia and Brianna carried a silence inside them that even daylight couldn't break. No makeup could hide the panic on their faces. No expensive coat could protect them from the weight of what they had done. They stood outside the glass tower of Hart Global Capital, a building that suddenly felt 10 stories taller than it did the day before. "Do we ring?" Brianna whispered. Olivia couldn't speak. She just nodded. A receptionist escorted them into a minimalist office. All clean lines, warm light and quiet power. Aaliyah Hart entered a moment later. Not in the champagne gown they had soaked the night before, but in a tailored black suit that framed her presence with precision and authority. She didn't look angry. She didn't look triumphant. She looked whole, entered, untouched by their cruelty. "Ms. Hart, we came to apologize," Olivia stuttered. "It was a misunderstanding," Brianna added quickly. "We didn't know who you were." Aaliyah raised one eyebrow, not mockingly, but with the calm curiosity of someone who already knew exactly how this conversation would end. You didn't treat me poorly because you didn't know who I was, she said softly. You treated me poorly because you didn't care. Brianna swallowed hard, shame crawling up her throat. We were stressed, she lied. Aaliyah tilted her head slightly. Cruelty is not stress. Cruelty is a choice. Olivia's voice cracked. We lost everything. The deal, the investors. People are blaming us. Please, give us another chance. Aaliyah walked around her desk, hands clasped loosely, as if weighing a truth only she could see. You didn't ruin the deal last night, she said, voice steady. You ruined yourselves. The moment you decided humiliation was entertainment. The words settled in the room like iron. Then she closed the folder on her desk, with a soft final click. A sound gentler than their laughter had been, yet far more devastating. My answer, she said, is final. There was nothing left to say. Olivia and Brianna stood there, silent, trembling, faces drained of color. And then Aaliyah turned away. Not out of cruelty, but out of peace. 'Cause there are some doors that once closed should never be opened again. The two women left her office, with everything they came to save already gone. Aaliyah didn't watch them go. She didn't need to. She had a new project to begin. And they were no longer part of the world she was building. The city moved on. It always does. But inside that ballroom, inside that company, inside every person who had witnessed the humiliation, something had shifted forever. Word spread faster than the champagne had spilled. People spoke about the woman in the gold gown. How she walked out without a single word. How the entire billion-dollar deal fell apart within minutes. How the two women who mocked her lost more in one night than they had ever imagined losing in their lives. But Aaliyah didn't linger on any of it. She stepped out of her building later that afternoon, sunlight catching her hair, confidence steady in every movement, and headed toward a new project, a new future, a new room that would know exactly who they were dealing with. The narrator comes in softly, the way truth always does. Power doesn't always announce itself, but cruelty reveals who you truly are. A final image of Aaliyah walking forward, leaving the past behind, without bitterness, without vengeance, only clarity, 'cause people often think they can measure you in a single glance. They think they can decide your worth before you speak a word. They think they can step on you without consequences, until the moment the world reminds them that the quiet ones are usually the ones holding everything together. Fade out. And now the final question, the one that turns viewers into a community. Have you ever been judged, underestimated, or dismissed before people knew who you truly were? Share your story below. Someone else needs the strength you found.